Hey guys, what's up? Lewin here at GarageBand and Beyond. Welcome back. So today I have to start this video review by asking you guys if you're watching this video on your cell phone or on your tablet or a laptop, please get your headphones, plug them in to both your device and your head. If you're listening in your home recording studio, you're good. At least if you have a good set of monitors. But really, you need headphones at very least to be able to hear the difference as I, demo these things here. So anyway, what I'm going to be talking about today are two very interesting plugins that I bought at the beginning of the summer, and they're from Slate Digital. I don't know if any of you guys have been following them, but really impressive company, slatedigital.com. There's a link below. So I got these two plugins, and I love them. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the virtual tape machine. And then we're also going to be talking about the virtual channel. Both very, very cool, very, very accurate sounding, super cool. Anyway, let's talk about the tape machine, because I think the tape machine is one of my favorite things. Both of these plugins I end up using, like here you can see on my drums I actually have the virtual channel going here. And then on the master output I have the tape machine going. But a lot of these, and I'm going to go through a couple of different projects and show you how I've been using them. But for the most part, you're going to see that I'm using at least the virtual channel on every single track. That should really tell you something. If I'm using it on every single channel, it's pretty cool. And also same thing with the tape machine, depending on what kind of recording I'm doing, but the tape machine is super cool. So I'm going to demo it with drums because I think that's where you're going to hear the greatest difference. So I'll stop talking, put your headphones on, and let's listen to this track. Okay, so hopefully you were watching the process and bypass switch right here as I was flipping back and forth. I don't know, I'm really hoping you guys can hear it because there is a dramatic difference when this thing is on or off. What I hear a lot is that the kick drum definitely builds or gets a lot more body to it, a lot more punch to it. And then something's happening somewhere in the high mids. There's this lift of, it's really, really gorgeous. And then it definitely is sort of darkening the overall sound of like the hi-hat and stuff like that. Typical characteristics of tape. And especially in this case, I'm using the 1/2-inch 2-track simulation. And more I turn this up, the more the output changes and stuff. I sort of like it at 12 o'clock, especially on this recording. It's a little bit hot. But depending on your recording, your settings are going to be different. Now, the other thing I'm going to say is, because I'm not going to go into like all the nitty gritty details of these plugins, I'm going to be really quick because there's plenty of other videos where you can see every single little feature. All I'm here really to do is encourage you guys to buy this stuff because I spent my own hard-earned money on it, and I love it, and I kind of can't live without it now. And I will say at the beginning I was a little like, did I just waste a ton of money? But now that I've spent a lot of time with them and I've started to understand how they work, I couldn't live without them. And it's been one of those things, and I talk about this a lot in my videos, about sort of the compounding factor of, you get a nice microphone, you get better cables, you get a better interface, and this and that and this and that. This is absolutely positively one of those things that I talk about all the time. This is a big component now in my home recording studio for how I'm getting these good recordings out of GarageBand. This is the whole recording that some of you might remember this. Right? Super cool song anyway. You can check out, there's a link for this song. But anyway, so that's that. Now the next thing I wanted to talk about, actually I'm gonna open up a new project and we're gonna look at that because we're just gonna look at the virtual channel on acoustic guitar and upright bass. So let's switch over to the next project. Okay, so here we are in the next project. This is something I just released with Sunshine Superman. Last video I made, if anybody's curious and wants to see the whole video, it's a really actually great video song. Go ahead and click the link below, or there's an annotation popping up around my head maybe. But anyway, the virtual channel by Slate Digital, super interesting. This was one of the ones that was a little bit more difficult to really comprehend how to use it. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't technical or anything. Just really understanding what instruments it sounded great on and, you know, which of these mixers were good for what. That took a little bit of time just learning the thing itself. It's really simple to use, actually. So anyway, what it really is an emulation or simulation of 5 of the most famous vintage mixers in rock and roll history. You know, we're talking about British, famous British consoles, famous American consoles, you know, some really interesting things. And they all have unique sounds. Now, this is certainly one of those things that's, I really think it's extremely important that you're really familiar with the recording that this is being put on for you to really hear the difference. So this is one of my sort of, I'm a little afraid of making this demo for you guys and doing this because I feel like a lot of you are going to write in like, oh, that's a placebo effect or something. It's totally not, you guys. You have to trust me that this is a very, very cool plugin. Both of these things are very, very cool, very much worth your money and your time. You know, I don't say that lightly either. You know, I spend my money very, very carefully when I buy plugins. I don't just buy stuff willy-nilly. You know, this is something I definitely recommend. So anyway, I'll shut up and let's listen to it. So one thing I got to say that's really, really cool, especially for GarageBand users, I can finally group channels across the board now. So like this, all these channels here, as I go down, you'll see they're all part of this group. And the bass 2, I actually kept it in there. Oh, wait, it's off. And the bass 2, and there it is off. Let's turn it back on. There it is. Okay, good. So what this really means by, what I mean by grouping is I can make a move in one of these channels. So for example, let's say I'm moving this from Brit 4K up to Brit N, right? And now if I go up here and I open this one, boom, it's on Brit N, right? And adversely, if I switch this back to Brit 4K, and now I look here on the bass track, it's switched down to Brit 4K. So that's really nice. You know, it's the first time plugin that I've encountered on GarageBand groups, and it just makes it easier. So if you want a certain sound, you could just go through all of them and, you know, they all move at once. It makes it life a lot easier. So now let's listen to it on this situation. I'm actually going to run this straight through the master channel on GarageBand. I'm going to run the virtual mix bus. I'm going to run the virtual mix bus. And as you can see now, it's grouped and it's part of that group. And I'm going to drive this up to, so if you get this group drive, this is really the you know, attenuation for the effect itself or for this plugin. So the more you have the group drive up, the more you're going to hear the difference. So let's get right into it. Well, let's get rid of this and just get here. So watch, I'm going to flip, I'm going to be selecting through these different channels. Right. Okay. So this is one of those ones that's going to be super subtle. And if you don't hear it, you're just not listening through like a good set of headphones, or maybe your monitors aren't aimed at your head perfectly right. But this is one of those things that I do not say this lightly. I totally think this is a little magical gem for any digital audio workstation that you're recording on, Pro Tools, Logic, whatever you're recording on. This is a very, very, very good plugin. So I got to give you guys a little bit of history. For those of you who don't know about vintage mixers, there was a lot of those things were hand wired. A lot of the components were handmade, but each one had a very specific tone and its own unique tone that engineers throughout time would, seek out. They would look for the SSL, or they would look for these Neve consoles. They would look for these mixers because they had a great sound. One of the things that we have lost in the digital world is, we just sort of open up channels and drop in compressors and EQs sort of, however we want. But very rarely is there one plugin across every single channel. That's where something like this does come across or come in. And it gives the overall recording a sense of continuity, I think. And then I also think it just sort of breathes that life into it that you know from all of the greatest recordings throughout time. This is like one of those very subtle things, but if you're listening to it right, if you're listening to it, critically with a good set of headphones or speakers or whatever, you're going to hear it and you're going to love it. Like I said, I've been using this on almost every single channel of every single recording I've been doing. And that should really tell you something. I hope that I've established myself online as a reviewer that you guys can trust. I don't review stuff that I hate at all. I've made a couple of reviews of, stuff that is like, hey, don't buy this kind of junk because it's junk. But I try not to do too much negative stuff on my channel, but this is certainly something you have to trust me. It's worth your money. Sit down, especially, if you're trying to choose between the two of these. The virtual tape machine's one of my favorite things ever. They're both great, but if you're going to buy the first thing out of the gate, I'd say tape machine's really, 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 really fun. But that's it, you guys. So, please, I encourage you to check out the Slate Digital website, slatedigital.com. They're actually coming out with new stuff all the time, and so I'm like saving up my pennies to buy some more plugins from Slate Digital because they definitely make some really interesting things. And again, I'm not getting paid for this review or anything. Like, I just made this for you guys because I think this is a very cool plugins that you should, at least they should be on your radar and maybe on your wish list. Oh, one last thing I'm going to say is, again, about, preamps. If you're thinking about buying like a preamp that was, say, under $1,000, don't do it. Buy these plugins instead. Buying a cheap preamp is just sort of like ridiculously, I just think it's a huge waste of money, really. Sorry, that's just what I think about it. At this point in my career, I think buying cheap preamps is just a joke, and I feel like it's a marketing ploy just to steal more money from musicians. So don't do it if you're listening to me. Get this instead, because this actually does, and I'm pointing to my screen like you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. This thing actually does what you want a cheap preamp or any preamp to do. It breathes a new life and a new tone into your signal path, and for dramatically less money. I'm not going to quote a price because prices are changing all the time, and depending on what part of the world you are in, it's going to vary. But that's it, you guys. All right, so check out slatedigital.com. Talk to you later. See ya.